that Islamists desire, whether they try and achieve it lawfully or through illegality, criminality, and terrorism. The means to attain this ghastly goal matter to me less than the goal itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wait for the microphone if you would mind, sir.
Dr. Irfan Al-Alawi, International Director of Center for Islamic Pluralism. A question for the Mayor. What do you know the essence of Islam, in particular the Tablighi Jamaat, which we have operating in the United Kingdom and has close ties with Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jamaat-e-Islami?
Extreme Islamists, as long as they were killing the Russians. That money was matched dollar for dollar by the Saudi royal family. And when the Russians went home, those people turned to look, who else is occupying Muslim lands? The same problem has now arisen in Iraq. Our completely illegal war in Iraq, which has only ever been about control of the oil, has created a breeding ground for terrorism. And when eventually some form of peace comes to Iraq, those people who've been trained to kill will disperse to the four corners of the earth. So what I argue for is our foreign policy should actually support those people who do share our values. The reality is, throughout the Cold War and in the years that followed, there's no honourable basis for the foreign policy that America and sadly Britain has pursued will support anybody irrespective of where they stand on democracy. And this is not unique about the Muslim world. The West supported dictators in Indonesia and in Zaire. All we asked was that they allowed us access to their raw materials and they crushed their own socialist and communist and trade union dissidents. And so I remember one thing, that when we had the first invasion, when the invasion of Kuwait happened, the Iranian news agency broadcast a statement saying Saddam Hussein has turned on his creators. And that is exactly what happened. When Saddam Hussein came to power, he wasn't denounced by the West. The CIA gave him a list of communists for him to kill, and MI6 gave him a list of trade unionists for him to kill. And I will actually point out my role in this. I've always supported progressive elements. I'm welcome to Qaradawi here, because he represents the strongest force for the modernisation of Islam. He doesn't agree with me. He doesn't agree with me about homosexuality, but it's only in the last 50 years the majority of legislators in this country agree with me about homosexuality. We were still sending homosexuals to prison 50 years ago. We had to fight for that. And I didn't, when we saw a radical force for change come out of the Catholic Church with the election of John the 23rd, the world didn't say, we can't deal with John the 23rd because he's not going to be on a gay rights demo. We welcomed that he was the most progressive Pope in 100 years, and he opened up the church to engagement and dialogue. And I will continue to disagree with Qaradawi, but I recognise he is the future of Islam, and it is the reactionary elements in Islam, it is the Saudi royal family and others that do everything possible to undermine his teaching for engagement with the West.
Okay. Let's try and move around the whole. Gentleman over there with the glasses, sir, just wait for the microphone if you wouldn't mind. Yes, sir, gentleman there.
I'm glad you didn't say the gentleman with the black shirt, because my choice of shirt has nothing whatsoever to do with my political opinions. This is a question for the Mayor. I don't think there's any person in the hall who would take issue with anything that Mayor Livingstone said. After all, he was talking about love and brotherhood. But you actually judge a person not by what he says, but by what he does. And I would like to ask the Mayor why, in a conference like today, which includes a very important debate on anti-Semitism, he holds it on the one day when no Orthodox Jew is able to attend.
This has been a problem that has recurred over decades. You would not get an attendance like this if we called this for Sunday. And in exactly the same way, that we will have a problem with the 2012 Olympics because it will clash with Ramadan. That is not a reason for not putting the Olympics on in London at that time. Well, what we have done is we've extended the conference so that Orthodox Jews can come and can participate before this conference ends. But it's a problem that's consistently come back. And we've had exactly the same sort of worries and concerns from many leading Muslims about the clash of Ramadan with the 2012 Olympics. It's impossible to fit everything around every religious calendar.
Thank you. And just as we don't discriminate against those in black shirts, I'm going to go to the far left, sir. That gentleman over there. Yes, no, just behind you, sir. The one with the hand up. Yes, please stand up. Yep. Just wait for the microphone.
My name is Muhammad from Iraqi Kurdistan. I think there is a clash of fundamentalism instead of a clash of civilizations. And I believe the Islamic barbarism does exist, and unfortunately exists around the world. And it is very active in my country, in Iraq. But in another hand, another fundamentalism does exist as well. I think Neoconservative, it is an example of that. So there is a clash between the policies of Al-Qaeda and Neoconservativism. So it is a choice for us whether we should.
Do you have a question, sir? Do you have a question you'd like to
So my question is, I think the violence cannot be tackled by violence. So the approach that Mr. Daniel follows is tackling violence, Islamic violence, by violence. And just mentioned to your seminary, SOAS last week at SOAS University. I think you are a keen advocate of violence means, and it is non-modern, and it is a kind of authoritarian approach to tackle another violence. Thank you.
I think what the gentleman is referring to is I gave a talk on Thursday evening at SOAS, the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies, in which I gave my understanding of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And to make a long story short, I argued that wars end when one side gives up. And that one can choose one side. One can either want the Israeli side to give up, in which case there is no more Israel, or one can hope for the Palestinian Arab Muslim side to give up, in which case Israel and its neighbors have harmonious relations, and Israel is accepted. In order to achieve that, you never know when you get a laugh. In order to achieve that, it is in order for Israel and its neighbors to have harmonious relations requires that the Palestinians give up on their goals, and that in turn means a sense of defeat. And I argue, since I do want Israel to be accepted by its neighbors, I argue that is something that we, Western states, should make as our goal. And I did not get at all into methods, tactics, how to achieve that, but simply saying the goal is the Palestinians should give up on their dream of eliminating Israel. I did not advocate violence. Perhaps it's useful, once I'm clarifying the record, to note from Ms. Yaqoob that I did not say that Muslims hate the Western way of life. I did not say that there's something in the Islamic faith that is violent. You all heard me, ladies and gentlemen. I did not say those words. I wish you would not put words into my mouth. Listen to what I said and argue with it. But don't ascribe to me things I haven't said.
Gentleman at the back there in the blue shirt with the glasses. Yes, sir. Oh, there's two gentlemen with blue shirts. Well, the one on my left. Yes, you, sir, the light blue shirt. Yes. Can we get a microphone to that gentleman? I've made it as difficult as possible for you. This is the test of your agility. It's to your right. There you go.
Thanks, Gavin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mayor Livingstone, you won't remember this, but before the last mayoral election, we met in North Finchley Shopping Centre when you were campaigning on Saturday.
I do remember that.
I asked you one question, and the question I asked you was about your views on Israel. Your response was that Israel should never have been created in the first place. I'd like to ask you about those views. I'd like to ask the panelists as well. And in view of the fact that you believe in a world civilization, and in view of the fact that you believe in the right of people to have self-determination, why should you take issue with the Jewish people to have their own state? Why should you take issue with what Martin Luther King, in his passage which was called A Letter to a Non-Jewish Friend, he said that the Jews had the right to a state as much as any other organisation had a right to a nation state.
No one would disagree with the academic concept that the Jews have a right to a state. What they didn't have a right to was the displacement of the Arab community. We now live in a world where the reality is there is an Israel. I would not have created an Israel, but there is an Israel there. I support the concept of the two-state solution. I want to see the ending of the wall and the separation so that there is economic links in the way that war is inconceivable now between France and Germany. But it was a travesty. And the main force driving American policymakers in actually getting the UN vote to create the State of Israel was they were too frightened of anti-Semitism in America and Britain to do what we should have done, which is open our doors to the refugees from Hitler and welcome them into Britain and America, not because of our fear of anti-Semitism, actually displace an established Arab population who have spent the last 60 years living in degrading conditions and subject to constant violence.
Standing up over there and has been waiting a long time. The one just behind, actually. I'll come to the gentleman in front here.
This is a question for Mayor Livingstone.
Yes.
We've heard here Daniel Pipes speak, and right after, we had Mr. Murray naming people. And involving in that practice that Daniel Pipes has mastered through his website Campus Watch, which has attacked academics regularly and had to undermine freedom of speech on American campuses. Now, why do they do that, Mayor Livingstone? Why do they expect that they have a right to come and speak and be heard and be respected, while they go shutting up people for standing up for Palestinian rights, for attacking Israeli apartheid? Now, these are people with blood on their hands. Mr. Pipes has advised the American administration on the Iraq war. He consistently supports Israeli policies. We just heard him now, justifying Israeli colonialism, justifying the apartheid wall, justifying the destruction of Palestinian rights, and the killing, practically, of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, what is forward other than destruction?
I'm quite happy for Mr. Pipes to deal with Mr. Pipes' website.
Right, okay, Mr. Pipes, deal with Mr. Pipes' website. Go ahead.
Telling the truth.
4 years ago, I started a little project called Campus Watch, whose purpose was to make the larger world aware of the deficiencies in North American studies on the Middle East. What we did was to collect information and to do our own research. In other words, to find what others had done and repost it and to do some of our own research. We have no police powers. We are a small think tank. We believe that those who engage in the public arena, such as politicians or movie stars or academics, should be held accountable. And the mayor will attest as a political figure that he is being scrutinized and criticized all the time, and it's what comes with the territory. I don't think you'd complain about it. A movie star, likewise, or a journalist. Mr. Eskel, I'm sure you're used to being criticized for what you do. Why is it that academics have this special privilege that it cannot be analyzed and critiqued? That's all we're doing. There's no freedom of speech being suppressed here. They're engaging in their freedom of speech to say what they want, and we're engaging in our freedom of speech to criticize them. Also, one other thing, you send an advisor to the President of the United States on Iraq. News to me. So I am not an advisor to the President on Iraq. I have met him only one time in a ceremonial, 2 times in ceremonial circumstances. I'm not an advisor to the President in any capacity.
Okay, Mrs. Pipes, thank you. Now, I'm trying to see people at the back. The lady there, yes.